Fit Podcasts. I am your host, Jared Shapiro. You can find me at Get Fit with Jared and pretty much everything. With me, as always, my beloved co-host, also rocking a Hulk shirt, Jay Scott, at Jay Scott Talks, again, on everything, or everything that matters.
Everything that matters, yes.
Jay, it's been a couple weeks. Go ahead.
I was holding in my smile because Jared is giving this countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2, and then he starts cussing. I have to push a second button, and I was trying not to erupt at that moment because that is the freeze frame that you'll see in the preview because our crack team of graphic experts leave our first frame in as the thumbnail for everything. So, I have to try to.
If someone wants to volunteer to do artwork for the show, that'd be amazing. But as of right now, you get what you pay for, I guess.
There you go.
Since we're both very busy, as we can attest to, it's been 2 weeks now since the last show.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
I've had 2 crazy weeks, but I think the and so this podcast, like, we're talking about fitness stuff. We're also talking about life a good bit. And I feel a little qualified to speak about you because you and I go back about 20 years at this point. We've both been pretty busy lately, but it's been good busy.
Yeah.
I've been busy because I've been traveling for work, and I've been making some extra money. You've been busy because you guys are still moving into your palatial estate, turning it into a courtly mansion. And you've also been really digging down with your fitness to make up for where you've had to cut corners. You and the wife are adjusting to her new job where she's making an exorbitant salary so you can live your rich, lavish lifestyle. We've both been busy, but we've been doing well. And sometimes when you're doing well, it takes an investment of time. And, sometimes you have to just say, we can't do the podcast this week.
Yeah, that's why I don't have a published schedule. I just tweet the morning of. And then this week's been crazy too. I mean, I'm doing IT security training, which is always fun. So my brain is very drained at this moment. Been up since 5 a.m.
Oh man, yeah, that's me this week. You've been sitting in training, and this week I've been conducting training all week, and I have to get up at the ungodly hour of 6 a.m., which for a nighthawk like me, getting up at 6 a.m. is almost like a death sentence because about 2 o'clock I'm done. There's nothing that's happening here. And no caffeine or any other stimulant is going to get me through. I just have to come home and take a nap, which I did immediately before this podcast. I slept for about a good 25 minutes, and I woke up with just enough time to one throat an egg white omelet with some cheese and then eat some peanut butter. And then I mainlined a Diet Mountain Dew, and here we are.
Water, my friend. Water.
Yep, and I've got mine. Got mine too because I'm going to the gym as soon as we get done here. So I got to have some fuel in the tank.
There you go. I think we're celebrating Taco Tuesday with healthy tacos.
Oh man, my favorite holiday, Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, man. So this week, we wanted to. Well, last week we talked about heart rates, and
yes.
One of the big things with heart rates is knowing where you're at, knowing what your zones are. To go with that, this week, we're talking about how not to overdo it at the gym. Now, I believe you sent me a video that I did not pull up. And what was the guy's name? Do you remember?
I have no memory of this.
Well, you sent me a video a few weeks
ago. Was that
the
obviously it was on YouTube.
The Canadian guy.
Was that the guy who you later sent me a video of, a different one from him?
Yes.
We still can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about. We are obviously well prepared for the show today because that guy actually has a wonderful channel. He is he's a certified trainer. He's a nutritionist. He has a degree in like kinesiology, I think. Like he's a very well credentialed fitness professional. And as I struggle to stall time
Jeff
here,
Nippard.
Thank you, Jeff.
Nippard.
Yes, and find him find him on YouTube. We wholeheartedly recommend his material. I watched a great video the other day that he posted about reading nutrition labels, which is something that Jared and I are really passionate about, that we really want to talk about down the road. Jeff Nippard, a great follow on YouTube. Throw him a subscribe. Tell him we sent you.
Yeah, and the video you sent me was Training to failure, I believe.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Because in that video, he breaks down. So a term that you guys need to know, if you don't know already, is RPE, which stands for your perceived rate of perceived exertion. And in that, he talks about a couple different ways to calculate your perceived rate of exertion, or your rate of perceived exertion. It depends if you're from the U.S. or from Canada or Europe, which is RPE or PRE. But basically, that is a way that you can measure how much you're exerting yourself doing a given exercise. And there's a couple ways to go about measuring it, but the easiest way is you can just ask yourself, hey, 1 to 10, how tired am I? And one method that he talks about in that video is so you take a weight that you think you can only get 8 to 9 reps on, and then when you feel like you can't go anymore, assign a number to that and then see how many more reps you can get. And that can kind of give you a baseline of not only of how well you can calculate how you feel, but also in time, by using an actual weight as a measurement and the number of reps to kind of qualify it, you can measure your progress over time, which I think is brilliant. Um, the average person, I'm hesitant to say the average person probably thinks they do more or do less, because I think it's a very personal thing. I can speak for myself. Over the years, I'm very scientific about what I can do. I know what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do, but I also think that there is a human factor where sometimes we can really push ourselves farther than we should go, or farther than we think we can go. So I think if I had to put a gun to my head, I'd say the average person probably thinks they're capable of doing a lot less than they really are. But I think if you ask them to say 1 to 10, how do you feel? If they just had a crazy exercise, they're probably going to say, oh, this was a 10. I can't do anymore. And the reality is everyone can probably always do more.
But there is a point where you hit diminishing returns. And, I cannot remember the term he talked about. Reps in. Man. This is what happens when we have to delay a show a week. But one of the things I remember him talking about was a number of reps that you can still have in reserve,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to minimize that as much as possible without going
Yes.
over. Yes.
Yeah. And the theory behind that is that if, let's say on a given exercise, your RPE of 10 is at, 9 reps. Well, then you should have no reps in reserve, which means not only exactly what your maximum level of performance is, but you also then can understand, well, when I can get to 10, I need to recalculate now. And you also know how to plan around that, because one of the pitfalls of programming, and this kind of ties in what we're talking to, because one of the pitfalls of programming is that a lot of people, before they become sophisticated lifters, or before they become experienced, in whatever workout routine they have, a lot of people are doing everything to failure every time. And some weeks that's fine, but you can't continually push, thinking from a macro level, you can't push 100% effort 100% of the time, because that's when you hit attrition. And if you're trying to lift 100% of the time, every time you go to the gym, that's great up until you're about 23 or 24. And at that point, unless you start getting on the gas, then you're going to start injuring yourself, injuring your joints, and you're going to be basically losing strength, because your muscles are just going to be give out. Your central nervous system is going to be fried. You have to take some weeks where you come back from it. One of the major adjustments that I had doing competitive strongman was learning that I had to program weeks where I had a significant deload. So like 12 weeks from a contest, I might start out, week 1, 2, 3, 4, establishing a baseline for where I want my lifts to be. And then weeks 5 through 8, I'm working in a mid range. So if I find out what my 100% are in week 4, well, then in week 5, maybe I'm 60%. Week 6, I'm 65%, 70%, 80%. And then, the 3 weeks leading up to the contest, I'm not going to push myself then, because I should be able to peak at the contest.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people fall short, is because they constantly want to hit that number, because they let their ego get in the way. And that's where you kind of have to sit back and look at your plan and say, what are my goals? What am I trying to accomplish? And am I really doing what I need to accomplish my goals? Because if you're working out without a goal in mind, you're probably wasting a lot of energy and wasting a lot of effort, and you risk overtraining.
Exactly. And of course, part of the part of getting in shape is giving yourself time to recover. And if you're just pushing yourself to the max the entire time, you're not getting the proper recovery time to go with that. I'm going to use the power of the internet and share my screen. Dun dun dun. All right. And share. That's why I need a producer. All right. So this right here was a blog from Ace Fitness. And just a couple of things.
Real quick, for people who don't know, what is ACE?
It's one of the premier fitness certifications out there, or at least one of the companies for getting certified. Certifiers. Man, this is what happens when you do a show on little sleep and not enough caffeine. So these are some of the signs of overtraining from ACE. Decreased performance, as you talked about. Loss of coordination, which would also start to happen as your performance decreases. Prolonged recovery. Again, if you're not giving yourself time to recover, you're not getting in the right shape. These are a couple that kind of surprised me, and for people that tend to go 110% too often, might be something to look for. The elevated morning heart rate and elevated resting blood pressure. Can you give any insight into those?
So, funny you should mention that, because the elevated morning heart rate and the resting blood pressure, and for those who have listened to the show before, that I have an unusual heart condition. So the way my heart operates is sometimes weird. So I'm probably not the best model to follow, but I know that one of the things that can influence that is dehydration, and not properly replenishing your minerals. If you're doing a ton of cardio, for instance, and you're not replenishing your fluids, replenishing your minerals, I don't know how the mechanisms work in the body maybe as well as I should, but I know that can contribute to it quite a bit. And when you start, if you wake up in the morning and your heart is racing, something's probably off. And, I would definitely say you should see a medical professional about that, because I've heard some horror stories of people having like low potassium or low iron levels related to that as well. And that can cause a whole other host of medical issues. So I would say of these things here, elevated morning heart rate and resting blood pressure, feeling flushed, those could actually be signs of major things, not just, oh, I've worked out too much. Because saying you've worked out too much, like, what does that even really mean? I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as overtraining. I think overtraining is a myth, but I also know that, overtraining really means under recovering. And I can go out right now and work out for 3, 4, 5 hours if I want to, lift weights the whole time, run, do calisthenics, do DDP yoga, or whatever I feel like doing. But but unless I have some magical cream that's going to heal my body from all of that, then I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to feel like crap, and I'm going to be beat up, and I'm going to be more prone to injury and all these symptoms that we see here. And that's kind of the tipping point is, if you're going to train hard, or even moderately so for people who are novices, you have to be preparing your body to train. You have to train smartly and train efficiently. Then you also have to recover well. You have to give your body the right foods. You have to, if you have massage or ice baths or whatever you do to recover, you have to give your body that, because if you don't put as much energy into recovering as you do into working out, then you're going to be susceptible to a whole lot of negative things. And like this list here is pretty extensive. And, the first two things on there that they list are decreased performance, which is a given, and then a loss of coordination. One thing that doesn't get talked about very much with overtraining or anything related to that is the fact that your central nervous system goes through a lot when you're lifting weights. So if you go to the gym and you lift weights for an hour, and then let's say you do 30, 40 minutes of cardio and then 10, 15 minutes of stretching, especially if you work like an office job, that means your body is humming along all day long, sitting at a desk. And now suddenly you're maxing out everything you do and then coming right back down again, and of course your body gets used to the strain you put on it. But, the way that your nervous system responds to that, it may not kick back as often. So there is a connection between how you train and the intensity you train and your mental well-being. not to get too off on a tangent, but with the mental aspects of it, I can speak for myself. That has been my absolute biggest problem at this stage of my life. Is that mentally I'm there or I'm not there. And I've had to learn that even if I'm not like eye of the tiger, right? Like I'm not ready to take the world on, I still have to go to the gym and do what I need to do because it's about my health. It's not about performance. It's not about my ego. It's not about beating the other guys in the gym. It's about making sure that I'm taking care of myself. And if I'm fried and I go to the gym, it's all over the place, but I still need to be there. And I guess just in a way to kind of dovetail that is when you overtrain, you really, really, or overtrain slash under recover, you really limit your mind's ability to tolerate the stress of working out and the stresses that come along with that. And you just set yourself up for future failure. Because if you are scatterbrained or you're uncoordinated or you're planned poorly, then you're going to perform poorly. And then that's just going to be a cascade effect. Then the next workout's going to be, less than the following workout. And the next thing you're riding a week off, and then you're riding a month off, and then you're just not going to the gym at all.
Yes, that's a very very dangerous hill, steep hill. Man, been a long day.
You have overtrained.
My brain has been overtrained today. All right, and those issues also kind of lead into the rest of the issues on here. Headaches. If you're having blood pressure issues, headaches are going to be a thing. Loss of appetite, muscle soreness and tenderness. I think one of the biggest things you touched on that even I don't think about is the impact to the central nervous system. Yes, muscles are going to be sore. That's the biggest thing you think about when you leave the gym. Is going to be sore. But you're not keeping your heart rate at 120 beats per minute all day, every day. You're just doing it for hopefully not more than the hour or so you're in the gym, and that does take a big toll on the internal stuff.
So I thought about this. I was first introduced to the idea of um protecting, for lack of a better word, or rehabbing my central nervous system when I started strongman training. There's a infamous American strongman named Travis Ortmeyer, and he wrote a blog piece many years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago at this point, where he talked about like preparing to squat, because squatting heavy is probably one of the most mentally challenging exercises because of the pain threshold that comes along with it from having the weight on your back and then of course actually doing the squat. And in this article he talked about how a lot of people fail before they even walk into the squat rack because they can't visualize themselves doing it. They can't visualize themselves being successful because mentally they're still at the office or they're still at home with their wife and kids or they're whatever. They're not here in that moment. And I didn't really understand that at the time until I got deep into training. And then years later, about 2 years ago now, I read the book Heavy Duty by Mike Mentzer. Now, Mike Mentzer was a very popular American bodybuilder in the late 80s. And he ascribed to a theory of working out, which basically is you do 3 or 4 sets of a lightweight to warm up, and then you have one set. And that one set that you do is your balls out, hardcore, frothing at the mouth, yelling and screaming. That's your set. And he won a lot of bodybuilding titles that way. And reading his book, which is a brilliant book, he talks about the role that the mind plays on building muscle, because he was a contemporary enemy of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we'll probably talk about bodybuilding one day, but Arnold, the gang, for lack of a better word, that Arnold ran with, they believed in volume training. They would go to the gym 2-3 hours, lift a lot of weights, do a lot of sets, a lot of reps, and they'd lift every day. Mike Mentzer and his crew, the heavy duty crew, they're going to go to the gym maybe 2-3 days a week, and they might be in the gym an hour, and that's all they're doing. Now, of course, I have to sidebar all this by saying all those guys are steroided out their mind. So, the returns, the returns for people, like for normal people, is going to be much different than theirs. But Mike Mentzer's point was that your body and your bodybuilding activities is just one facet of who you are. So if you spend all of your waking hours under the weights, you're not reading, you're not writing, you're not swimming, you're not sleeping, you're not enjoying time with loved ones, you're not doing things that make you human, and therefore you're going to be incomplete. And to have balance to your life, you need to make sure that your time is equally divided among things so that way you can recover from the stressors of working out. And that opened my mind. And I was like, I never considered that before, because I come from the mentality of, well, if I wake up sore, I'll just pop some Tylenol, put some ice on it, and get to the gym. And now I realize, you know what? Mike Minster says it's okay to take a week off every now and then. Maybe that's what I need to do. And it really led me to have a much healthier relationship with the gym, because I no longer guilt myself over not going. And I don't reach that point of attrition with my workouts. My workouts continue to be fruitful and productive, in part because if I have to take a day or a couple days away, I know that it's not a bad thing. And I'm not having that guilt response over it and pumping my system with cortisol because I'm stressing over it, and doing just the opposite. I'm kicking back and I'm having a good time.
Yeah, just like anything in fitness, even the workout part, there's got to be a moderation to it. Um, Too little, too much, just like food. It's all a balance. I had to check that book out. I've heard of that guy.
Oh
I
man,
think I've
heavy
heard it.
duty is great. Heavy duty is wonderful. And the thing I hate about recommending bodybuilding books or any bodybuilding material at all, because like I would tell everybody, check out Kai Green's video series on YouTube. He has a whole video series. It's called F Overtraining. Overtraining is a myth. And he comes from it from the standpoint that, and I love Kai Green, by the way. Like, I'm a diehard Kai Green fan. I always will be. But his point of view on overtraining is that most people don't push themselves hard enough anyway. And I think that's probably true. I'm not going to say we never reach our full potential, but it is very hard for a person to maximize their potential. And Kai encourages people to not think that I'm overtraining, because that's a limiting factor. Just take it out of your mind. And for a guy like Kai, it's less of a rule and more of a philosophy. Like, don't start your program by saying, well, I shouldn't do too much, right? First, you need to find out what you can do and go from there, and then make a program that enhances that fits that. So I think it's easy to say overtraining is a myth, but then you go and work yourself too hard, you injure yourself, you're dehydrated, you're depleted, and you can't get anything done. So I hate to, man, I hate to agree with you. Like, I hate to say moderate. I hate it. I hate to say moderation, because I'm not a big believer in moderation when it comes to things like that. But the older I get, the more I find out there's a lot of wisdom in moderation. I spent the first half of my life maxing out everything I did. And I'm not going to say I would take any of it back, because I wouldn't. But, maybe if I had moderated myself a little bit better over the years, I might be in a little better shape than I am now. But, I think that the fear is that I would never want to tell someone that they need to watch out doing too much, because I think most people never do enough.
Well, for what it's worth, it took me 40 years to figure that out. So,
Yeah, and
you got it
so
coming.
that's a great point, because I was going to turn the microscope on you next, because so you are the king of being useless. Um, I mean, you're absolutely the most worthless human being I know,
I try.
and I say that with all the love in my heart, but I also know that, as absolutely unhelpful as you are in life, you still find the energy to do a hour of DDP yoga a day, sometimes more. And on top of that, sometimes you're doing DDP yoga for an hour in the morning before you go to work. And then after work, you're going to Planet Fitness and getting on the elliptical, or you're lifting weights or whatever. And
I'm about to start
I don't,
jujitsu again, too, by the way.
and I don't know how. And so for people that don't know, Jared, like, I don't know how we get from, I'm going to buy two Little Caesars pizzas and that's my food for the week,
That was a while ago.
to
Just throwing that out there.
that, yeah, to this guy. Like, what's a motivating factor for you? Is it just the weight? Like, are you trying to get laid? Like, how did you get started that way?
Well, a lot of it was, I mean, I've always been a big guy, but I used to be a lot more active. I did karate for years in high school, so there was that, plus younger metabolism. Then I was on my feet all the time working retail, so while not the healthiest way to do it, I was still burning a lot more calories than just sitting in a chair. But when I would start working in an office, my weight just kind of shot up out of nowhere, And I looked around, I see people that they're so big they can barely walk or can't walk. I'm just like, I don't want to be that guy. And that was one of the things that really pushed me into get back into martial arts while I was still in New York. Um, and I never really wanted to stop martial arts. It just kind of happened when I had to leave New York. And then just while I was back in Charleston, never really worked out where my work schedule and a training schedule melded together. But now, working from home, I have a little more control over that. I found a place I like. I've talked to the instructor a couple times. Cool guy. It's mainly no gi jiu-jitsu, which is in the 2 years I was training jiu-jitsu like 2 or 3 times a week. I think I did no gi twice.
Really?
So it's almost a different experience entirely.
It's a very different experience training gi, no gi. Like all of my jujitsu experience comes with no gi.
Yeah,
Um, because they don't well, at least back then they didn't make a lot of gis uh in my size, so a gi wasn't really an option for me.
yeah. I'm gonna miss his collar chokes though. And one of the guys I used to roll with in New York, he had this thing where he would just every time he would move around, he would just try to undo the gi a little bit more, and all of a sudden you have your gi hanging out, and he uses that to catch your
Yeah.
arm, and you're just like, well, this sucks. But yeah, it'll be a different game, a little bit slipperier game too, probably.
So my question then, like knowing that that's kind of your immediate history, so so I know that the that DDP yoga was a big thing for you, but I also know that you were in the gym before that because we worked out together off and on over the course of years at different times. How like do you with your activity level now doing DDP yoga as much as you do on the level that you do, like how close do you think you are to have reached your ceiling with what you can do before you hit the level, right? You know what I'm saying?
That proverbial plateau, you mean?
Yeah, like just like how do you know, like how do you step back before saying this is too much? Because to me, like you're doing like I said, about an hour of it every day, and I'm sure there are people out here, like we use an hour. An hour is always a measurement of something long. Like when I do an hour on the elliptical machine, I want everyone to know about it, right? But the reality is an hour of DDP yoga that intense? And it's like, well, at your level it can be because I've seen your workouts, but for a beginner an hour might not be that hard. But then you have like boxing training. An hour of boxing training, you might burn 1,000 calories. That's crazy. So how do you go about adjusting what is your upside and what is your downside for DDP yoga?
So with when I first started doing DDP yoga in 2019, well, hardcore in 2019, um, I worked a much earlier shift. So I got home. I had about an hour and a half before the wife got in. So I was like, take the dogs out, do DDP yoga for an hour. And I was doing that on a daily basis. Dropped a lot of weight very quickly, but I was also very sore. And now, when I do it in the mornings, I usually do closer to the 35, 45-minute range. Um, but I also do maximum engagement so I can keep my heart rate up. Um, I also broke down and bought the DDPY jacked straps, which I tweeted about this morning. And you saw the results from that. It was 45 minutes and about 500 calories that I burned. It's a lot better than the elliptical. It's about on par with the elliptical. Anyways,
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're doing on the
yeah,
elliptical.
yeah, yeah, true. Uh, but yeah, I think one of the reasons I went more towards the 35, 45-minute range is I realized if I'm doing an hour every morning, because a couple months ago when I started doing the morning workouts, I was like, I'll get up to an hour. I was very sore after day 3, and I want to be able to do a full 5 days, my hashtag 5 days of fitness. So I learned pretty quickly that if I'm going to do the 5 days, it's smarter to do a little bit shorter but more consistent. Because by day 4, doing an hour each day, it was a lot more tempting to just stay in bed a little bit longer.
So I think you've hit an important point there. So one of the reasons that any program fails, whether it's diet or exercise, is that people have a tendency to just they want to. It's like whether it's quitting smoking, stopping drinking, or exercising, they want to go like full on from the beginning. And if you say to yourself, well, I need to do an hour of whatever every single day, well, by the second or third day, like your interest is going to wane. And it's going to wane not because you're not motivated or you're not passionate or you don't know the value in it, but just we're busy. Everybody's busy,
Yeah.
and unless you're a lucky person where all you can do is focus on training or you're paid to do it and it's part of your, compensation package, like if work gave me 2 hours a day of my 8 hour day where I could just focus on training, I would I would cry. You know what I mean? I would never leave, but that's just not the way it works. So, I got an 8 hour work day. I got an hour commute, there and back. And then I got to work in 2 hours for the gym. Well, now we're looking at almost a 12-hour day with traffic. And not to mention that I got to bring my own food, my change of clothes and everything else. To say you're going to do that 5 days a week or even 7 days a week, good God, like that's insane. And I think that's where you found your success maybe is you're doing a relatively smaller workout, but you're able to do it every day. And once you build those habits, that's how you get up. Like you can't do an hour a day from the start if you can't do 10 minutes a day.
Right.
You
Definitely.
have to build, you have to get into that mindset.
Yeah. This is why when I teach DDP Yoga, level one instructor, certified, at Get Fit with Jared. So when I teach, if I'm doing a class, I've found it is a lot easier to do an hour because you have people in there and they also help encourage each other, but they're not there every day. When I've worked with people one on one, I tend to lean towards again the 35, 45 minutes because that number one gives them a chance to ask questions if they want to. It's a lot easier to squeeze that into a day. And then on top of that 35, 45 minutes, we've got warm ups, setting up equipment because doing stuff remotely. So it's easy to eat up an hour still with all the other stuff that goes in there, heart rate monitor checks, all that fun stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because when you mention like, hey, I'll set aside an hour for the class. Well, you've got 60 minutes for the class, but that's not 60 minutes of instruction. Maybe 35, 40 minutes of instruction. Then you got a cool down and a warm up and Q&A and everything else. So, that's good for a class setting. But when you're by yourself, like, I always think that I'm kind of an odd duck because like right now, I cannot wait to get on the elliptical machine because unlike you, and this is where you and I, well, we differ on a lot of things, but I love to not be in front of my phone. I hate it. So for me, when I get on the elliptical, that is time away from my phone, which means time away from text messages and emails and social media and everything else. And I listen to my music and I read my book, and that's my getaway. But I'm also burning a couple hundred calories.
yeah.
And for me, I remember the first time I remember the first time I ever got on an elliptical machine. There was this older dude at the gym, and shout out to every older black guy at every gym because they are always the fountain of wisdom and encouragement. And in every gym I've ever been to, there's been an older black dude who's always been my number one fan, and I can't express my gratitude enough for those guys. And
It's
like I
true.
remember
They're at
this.
every gym I've been to.
They are, yeah, and God bless them. They're the best. They're the salt of the earth. But I remember this dude, like back then I was pro wrestling, and so I got all my cardio training in the wrestling ring. I never got on a piece of cardio equipment, and I remember this dude used to chide me. He's like, "Man, when are you gonna get an elliptical with me?" And I was like, "Oh man, I don't need to do that." And then I remember the first day I got on, and I did like the first 3 or 4 steps, and I thought it was broken because it hurt my legs so bad. I was like, clearly I'm fighting against the machine here. And I remember I did a 5 minutes and I could barely stand. And I thought that my body would somehow deformed and I could never do this. And then I remember the day I finished a 2 hour session on the elliptical, which no one should do 2 hours in the elliptical. That's a horrible idea. But when I was training for when I was training for my first tough man tournament, I was trying to get my weight down as much as possible. So I was doing a lot of unhealthy things. And I remember when I finished 2 hours on there, I mean, I had burned some ungodly amount of calories. And I thought to myself, you know what? There was a time when I couldn't do 5 minutes. And now I'm looking at 2 hours and wondering if I can do three. Like, again, I think that might be, so moderation would be somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Because 2 hours is a bit much, but I think about that. And then even now, like, 15 years later, I can still get on and do an hour and it doesn't kill me. And, with the exception of the pain in my ankle and my knee, which is something I'm working through, I'm blessed that I can still do it. And I think, well, it's because I paid those dividends earlier in life, and so that's why I argue with myself about what do I believe in moderation, because maybe if instead of all those hour and 2 hour sessions on the elliptical when I was in my 20s, if I had reduced them to 15 or 20 minutes, I might not be where I am right now. So I don't know, maybe my upside is just a little bit higher than I gave myself credit for. So maybe moderation for me doesn't exist in the elliptical because I love it. It's my favorite thing.
I mean, that's my go-to cardio. And even with DDP Yoga is great cardio, also great stretching and all. I still think it's important to go to the gym a couple times a week and hit the elliptical or the treadmill or
Whoa,
something.
whoa,
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 whoa.
whoa,
So, sir,
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 sir.
are you saying that a person needs to do more than DDP yoga?
Why, yes.
Because just a few weeks ago, when I said, man, my knee's hurting, is really limiting what I'm doing in the gym. And you're like, well, you're wasting your time going to the gym. You should just be doing DDP yoga. It's all you need. And then a few days later, this guy is at Planet Fitness on the elliptical, and he's like, oh, that's Planet Fitness, but it's only $10 a month. And then he's lifting dumbbells, and then he's bench pressing, and now he's getting on, on here and saying, well, a person should really get into the gym and do more. So how has that changed for you?
Two things. One, you need to recognize sarcasm. Two, if you only get to do one workout, DDP Yoga is one of the best single workouts you can do.
I agree wholeheartedly. However,
However, if you can afford an extra couple bucks a month to go to Planet Fitness, you should pay a couple bucks a month to go to Planet Fitness. I know it gets a bad rap because of, well, there's all kinds of reasons it gets a bad rap. I mean, it's cheap, and they got equipment that's a lot more expensive than what you can get at home, for that price.
I was a member of Planet Fitness. Did we work out together at Planet Fitness, or were you in New York then when I was going
I was
there?
probably in New York by then because we used to go to World Fitness
World
before
Fitness,
you went to
yeah.
Crunch. Yeah,
So
they're all
I'm
gone
I'm
now.
I'm in the 1% that had multiple gym memberships at one time, because when I was when I was working night shift at my old job, sometimes I get off at midnight and that's my daytime. So Planet Fitness is 24/7. So it's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. I'm going to Planet Fitness. And they also had the massage chairs, which I love, and the tanning bed, which I used to take advantage of back when I needed to tan because I was in front of cameras. And I loved it there. And I never, even me being a total dyed in the wool meathead, I never had a problem at Planet Fitness. And at the Planet Fitness here, where I live, at least when I was going there, we had two, not one, but two IFBB pro bodybuilders that worked out in our Planet Fitness. Now they weren't big time guys, Well, I should say guys. One was a guy, one was a lady. They weren't big time, like in the open men's, heavyweight bodybuilding. They were in the figure side of things, but they were getting it at Planet Fitness. And it's like I never saw the lunk alarm go off or whatever. People were in there killing it all the time. I think each gym is what you make it, and
Yeah,
and I've never had anything but good experiences at Planet Fitness. Now, currently, I work out at Crunch Fitness, which is far superior to Planet Fitness in every way. Um, and my Crunch Fitness is great, and I love it. And go Crunch all day long. But if you don't have a Crunch nearby, there are more Planet Fitnesses. It's worth your $10 a month for sure.
I don't have a single crunch up here, but I have 3 Planet Fitnesses within 15
Yeah,
minutes.
it's crazy, man. It's crazy how that is.
If I travel for work, there's one by all the offices, so I'm good.
And think about when we were younger, like we were in high school. There was no gyms. There were no gyms anywhere. You
It was
know,
just like the little mom and pop things that had a couple treadmills and some free weights. That was about it.
like they were speakeasies back in the day. Like trying to find a gym to do powerlifting when I was just getting into that, it's like I would have to like almost be recruited by someone. Like I'd be at the gym and a guy would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, come to this address at 4 o'clock on Saturday." And it's like, and okay, here's like a tattered business card. And then it's like, oh, they'll let you in. They got to turn the key to open the door. And it's like, and I have to think to myself, we have all these gyms now and they're always packed. Everybody's trying to get in shape. Everybody's trying to get laid. And I wonder, like, how are people getting in shape 20 years ago? Because there were no gyms to go to. Were people just in that bad a shape back then? And I just don't remember it.
There was a reason the muscle beach thing was a thing.
I guess, man. Like it blows my
Just work
mind
out
when I
outside.
go to the gym on a Tuesday, and it's a Tuesday in middle of the week, and I go after dinner and the gym's packed full. And it's completely packed. And I love it because I love to see people getting in better shape. I love to see people getting healthier. To me, that's worth a lot of inconvenience. But I also have to think, like, I remember when I was a kid, I would have killed to have a gym to go to 7 days a week. Like that would have been an answer, like from a blessing from the gods. And now it's almost second nature. It's almost like people take it for granted. And
Yeah.
to get back to our original topic, I think that that's part of the problem is, like, we see a lot of people getting in great shape, right? And it's wonderful. How much of that, like, in the fitness influencer sphere, it's like, are these people really encouraging people to do their best and reach their maximum potential? Or are we selling a product? Or are we doing both? And that's where I struggle sometimes when I hear advice about overtraining or undertraining from fitness celebs, because I feel like there are some people out there that are, obviously, like an example, like Dr. Lane Norton. Lane Norton is not only literally a doctor in that field, he's also a highly decorated professional bodybuilder, and he's in great shape, and he gives tons of free advice over on his socials. You can find him anywhere. Lane Norton PhD. And he has an app he sells, but people all the time comment, hey, I don't have the app, but thanks for the advice. He's like, great, because that's what I'm here for. But then you go over to Instagram, and how many profiles are there where it's like, buy my protein powder, buy my this, buy my vitamin, buy my clothing, buy my bags, and I just sometimes I try not to be cynical, but I can't help but think that everybody doesn't have everyone's best interest at heart.
If if it looks like 90% of an Instagram influencer, if 90% of their posts are trying to sell you something with a code, be skeptical. They're not all bad, but be skeptical. But I think that's a topic for another episode because
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what brought it to my mind was when you talked about us. You said, hey, let's talk about overtraining. And for me, overtraining goes a little bit deeper than just a training, because it comes back to your motivation. What's your motivation to train? What's driving you to train? It's like that old adage, you can bring a horse to water, but can't make him drink. If you don't want to work out, it doesn't matter if you're at the gym. You're not going to put in your best effort. And so many people on social media, they get influenced one way or the other. And with so many of these influencers, they're saying, hey, buy my program, stick to my program. And what if that's not the best thing for this person? What if it's not pushing them nearly far enough as they need to go? Or in some cases, what if it's pushing them too far? For the naive lifter, they won't know the difference, and they put their faith in these gurus, and not everyone is what you need to be following. So, when you talk about overtraining, it just kind of made me think about the influencers, because I follow lots of them on Instagram, and there are some great ones out there that really care about their customers. But at the end of the day, every follower is a customer,
exactly.
and that's kind of where it's like, okay, so do you really care if they don't buy your program? Do you really care if this stranger loses 20 pounds? Does it really matter to you? And if it does, great. There's no way I can know. But I just have to be skeptical, because I feel like so many of these influencers, they're trying to use a cookie cutter approach to motivate people. And that's not what people need. People need to be motivated individually, but they need to be educated more than anything. So they not only avoid, burning themselves out, but they also avoid understimulating themselves as well.
Well, speaking of knowing when to stop, I think it may be that point for this week's episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean we're at 45 minutes.
Oh man.
How
Really?
how long can you expect people to
Wow.
look at our beautiful faces?
I can't, time is flying by. I guess I got off on a rant. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay as long as you enjoyed yourself. But we'll be back next week And Jay, I have a surprise for you.
Oh, do you now?
We have our first guest booked for next week.
Oh, that's right. We do have a guest book next week.
That's right. Jared Fritz. He spells his name wrong for some reason. But that's okay, we still love him. Referee of champions. Professional fitness guy.
Yeah, Jared Fritz, licensed massage therapist. He's an Advocare guy. And probably more important than anything, he is a referee for the National Wrestling Alliance. You can catch him Tuesdays on Fight.tv for NWA Power, which is our weekly show, where he does a great job as an excellent professional wrestling referee, one of my best friends, and probably the most obnoxiously positive guy you'll ever meet.
And that's saying something if you ever meet DDP.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and he'll be a great conversation with him to come.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to that next week. Aiming for 6 o'clock, but of course, life happens. So
sometimes you have to take a nap and eat an omelet.
Exactly. Keep an eye on our Twitters. The names are below at Get Fit with Jared for myself, at J Scott Talks for Mr. Scott. And as for this week, it's time to be a little less fat and a little more fit.